The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers alike. At its heart stood the Zarnith Empire, a coalition of advanced alien species who ruled over countless worlds. Among their many achievements was the creation of dragon cubs, small, genetically engineered creatures that could harness energy and serve as living power cores for starships. These dragon cubs were not ordinary animals. They glowed faintly with an inner light, their scales shimmering like molten metal. But something had gone terribly wrong. For weeks now, the newest batch of dragon cubs had been screaming non-stop. Their cries echoed through the halls of the research facility where they were kept, piercing even the strongest soundproof barriers. The noise wasn't just loud, it was chaotic, erratic, and capable of interfering with nearby machinery. Machines would short-circuit, lights flickered uncontrollably, and entire systems crashed under the strain. It was as if the very fabric of technology rebelled against the relentless wails of the cubs. The Imperial engineers, renowned for their brilliance, tried everything to calm them. They administered sedatives strong enough to knock out a grown Krakthar beast. They attempted telepathic links, using mind meld devices designed to soothe agitated minds. They even installed sonic dampeners around the containment chambers, hoping to cancel out the screams. Nothing worked. If anything, the cubs only grew louder, more restless, and harder to control. Desperation began to creep into the Empire's leadership. Without the dragon cubs, their fleet of starships would lose a critical source of power. Entire campaigns could grind to a halt. Like something had to be done. And fast. It was then that someone remembered Jae-hyun. Jae-hyun was a human, a rarity in this part of the galaxy. Decades ago, he had been abducted from Earth during one of the Empire's resource raids. Back then, he was just a mechanic working on old combustion engines in a scrapyard. But his skills quickly caught the attention of the aliens, who forced him into servitude. Over time, Jae-hyun earned a reputation for solving problems no one else could. Whether it was repairing a malfunctioning warp drive or figuring out why a hydroponics bay refused to grow crops, Jae-hyun always found a way. His hands moved with precision, his mind worked faster than any computer, and his instincts rarely failed him. Still, despite his talents, Jae-hyun remained little more than a tool to the Empire. And he lived in a cramped quarters deep within the facility, surrounded by tools and spare parts. To the aliens, he was expendable, an asset to be used until he broke. But Jae-hyun didn't let bitterness consume him. Instead, he focused on survival, taking pride in his work and dreaming of freedom. When the call came for him to report to the Dragon Cub containment chamber, Jae-hyun wasn't surprised. He knew the Empire only summoned him when all other options had failed. What did surprise him, however, was the sight that greeted him when he arrived. The containment chamber was enormous, easily the size of a small arena. Thick glass walls separated observers from the interior, which was filled with glowing dragon cubs. There were 6 of them, each about the size of a large dog. Their bodies shimmered with iridescent colors, each shifting between hues of gold, silver, and crimson. Their eyes burned with unnatural intensity, and their mouths opened wide as they screamed, releasing sound waves powerful enough to rattle the floor beneath Jae-hyun's feet. Standing beside him was Hana, a xenobiologist tasked with monitoring the cubs' behavior. She was young, probably no older than her mid-20s, with short black hair and sharp features. Unlike most of the aliens, she treated Jae-hyun with respect, speaking to him directly rather than barking orders. "They've been like this for days," Hana explained, her voice tense but calm. "We've tried everything we can think of, but nothing works. The Emperor himself is demanding answers." Jae-hyun nodded, his expression unreadable. He stepped closer to the glass, studying the cubs carefully. They thrashed around wildly, clawing at the air and snapping their jaws. Their screams seemed almost angry. Not the kind of anger born of pain or fear, but something deeper, more primal. Jae-hyun frowned, trying to make sense of it. "Do they respond to anything?" he asked, glancing at Hana. "Not really," she admitted. "They react violently to sudden movements or loud noises, but even silence doesn't help. In fact, sometimes it makes them worse." Jae-hyun mulled this over, his mind racing. He turned back to the cubs, watching them closely. For a moment, he thought he saw something, a brief pause in their screaming, followed by a slight tilt of their heads. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it gave him an idea. "I need access to the chamber," he said suddenly. Hana blinked in surprise. "That's impossible. The environment inside is too dangerous. You'd be risking your life." "I've taken bigger risks," Jae-hyun replied simply. "Besides, I won't know what's wrong unless I get closer." After some hesitation, Hana agreed. With her help, Jae-hyun suited up in protective gear and entered the containment chamber. The moment he stepped inside, the screaming intensified. The sound hit him like a physical force, vibrating through his bones and making his teeth ache. But Jae-hyun didn't flinch. He knelt down, placing his hands on the floor to steady himself, and closed his eyes. For several minutes, he stayed still, letting the chaos wash over him. Slowly, he began to notice patterns in the noise, the pitch rising and falling, the rhythm shifting ever so slightly. It reminded him of something, though he couldn't quite place it. Then, without thinking, he started humming. It was a simple tune, one he hadn't heard in years, an old lullaby his mother used to sing to him when he was a child. The melody flowed naturally, soft and soothing. And then, something incredible happened. The dragon cubs stopped screaming. One by one, they turned toward Jae-hyun, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The room fell silent, save for the gentle hum of his voice. Even Hana, watching from outside, held her breath, stunned by what she was seeing. For the first time in days, the dragon cubs were calm. When Jae-hyun finally stopped humming, the silence lingered. He looked at the cubs, unsure of what to say. Then, cautiously, he reached out a hand. One of the cubs stepped forward, its tiny snout brushing against his fingers. A spark of connection passed between them, fleeting but undeniable. Whatever was wrong with these creatures, Jae-hyun realized. And it wasn't mechanical. It was emotional. And somehow, he had stumbled upon a way to reach them. But as he stood there, surrounded by the now quiet dragon cubs, Jae-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Empire wouldn't be satisfied with a temporary fix. They wanted a permanent solution. And Jae-hyun knew, deep down, that finding one would put him at odds with forces far greater than himself. The discovery was both thrilling and unsettling. Jae-hyun's humming had calmed the dragon cubs, but it raised more questions than answers. How could such a simple act achieve what the Empire's most advanced technology couldn't? And why did the cubs respond so strongly to something as basic as a lullaby? Hana was the first to voice her thoughts. After escorting Jae-hyun out of the containment chamber, she led him to a small observation room where they could talk without being overheard. Her sharp eyes studied him intently, searching for some clue that might explain what had just happened. "That was incredible," she said finally, breaking the silence. "I've never seen anything like it. Do you have any idea why they reacted that way?" Jae-hyun shrugged, leaning back in his chair. He looked tired, the weight of the day showing on his face. "Not really," he admitted. "It's just music. I used to hum tunes like that all the time when I worked alone. It helps me think." "But these aren't machines," Hana pressed. "They're living creatures. Maybe there's something about your voice or the melody that resonates with them emotionally." Jae-hyun frowned, considering this. He wasn't a scientist. His expertise lay in fixing broken things, in not understanding the inner workings of alien biology. But he couldn't deny that the cub's reaction felt personal, almost intimate. It wasn't just about sound. It was about connection. "We should test it," Hana suggested, her tone growing excited. "Try different melodies, see if other songs work too. If we can figure out what triggers their response, we might be able to replicate it." Jae-hyun hesitated. He didn't trust the Empire's motives, and the thought of turning his discovery into another tool for their exploitation made him uneasy. But he also knew they couldn't ignore the problem forever. The cubs were suffering, and their screams were causing widespread chaos. Someone had to find a solution. "All right," he said at last. "Let's try it, but we do it my way." Over the next few days, Jae-hyun and Hana began experimenting with various musical compositions. They started with recordings of ancient Korean folk songs, chosen for their simplicity and emotional depth. Hana played the tracks through speakers installed inside the containment chamber while Jae-hyun observed the cubs' reactions. At first, the results were mixed. Some songs seemed to soothe the cubs, while others caused them to grow agitated again. A haunting melody from Earth's classical repertoire sent the cubs pacing nervously, their tails flicking in irritation. In contrast, a cheerful children's song elicited soft chirps and gentle head bobs, as if the creatures were trying to mimic the rhythm. As they tested more songs, patterns began to emerge. The cubs responded best to harmonies rooted in warmth and sincerity, and complex arrangements or overly dramatic pieces only confused them, triggering bursts of noise and movement. It was clear that the key wasn't complexity. It was emotion. One evening, after hours of testing, Jae-hyun decided to improvise. Sitting cross-legged on the floor outside the containment chamber, he picked up a small handheld instrument Hana had brought him, a kind of portable synthesizer capable of mimicking traditional Earth sounds. Closing his eyes, he let his fingers wander across the keys, creating a slow, lilting tune that blended elements of both Western and Eastern scales. The effect was immediate. The dragon cubs gathered near the glass wall, their glowing eyes fixed on Jae-hyun. Their bodies swayed gently, matching the rhythm of the music. For the first time since the experiments began, they seemed truly at peace. Hana watched from nearby, her expression a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You're amazing," she murmured. "How do you know exactly what to play?" "I don't," Jae-hyun replied honestly. "I just feel it. Like I'm listening to something deeper than the notes themselves." His words stayed with her long after they left the facility that night. There was something profoundly human about Jae-hyun's approach, something the Empire would never understand. To them, everything boiled down to logic, efficiency, and control. But Jae-hyun operated on instinct, empathy, and creativity. And somehow, it worked. Despite their progress, tensions within the Empire continued to rise. Word of Jae-hyun's success reached the upper echelons of leadership, sparking both fascination and suspicion. The overseers demanded regular updates, pressuring Hana and Jae-hyun to produce faster results. When questioned about the specifics of their methods, Jae-hyun remained deliberately vague, citing ongoing experimentation. "They want us to automate the process," Hana confided one night as they reviewed data in the lab. She sounded frustrated, her hands clenched into fists. "They think we can replace you with an AI system programmed to generate soothing sounds." Jae-hyun snorted, shaking his head. "Good luck with that. Machines don't have souls. These cubs need something real, not algorithms." Hana nodded reluctantly. She knew he was right, but the Empire wouldn't care about philosophical debates. All they cared about was maintaining order and ensuring their power supply remained uninterrupted. Determined to protect their discovery, Jae-hyun came up with a plan. And under the guise of collaborating with the engineers, he helped design a prototype AI system designed to replicate his humming. However, he subtly sabotaged the programming, embedding flaws that would cause the system to fail under stress. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it bought them time. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun and Hana grew closer as they worked together. Though their backgrounds were vastly different, she a xenobiologist trained in cutting-edge science, he a mechanic abducted from Earth. They shared a mutual respect and determination to help the dragon cubs. Conversations between them often drifted beyond the confines of the project, touching on topics like freedom, ethics, and the cost of survival in a galaxy ruled by tyrants. One night, as they sat side by side in the dimly lit lab, Hana turned to Jae-hyun with a question that had been weighing on her mind. "What happens if we succeed?" she asked quietly. "If we find a way to stabilize the cubs, will the Empire just use them until they burn out?" Jae-hyun didn't answer right away. He stared at the glowing screen in front of him, lost in thought. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. "Then we'll have to decide what kind of people we want to be. Are we going to stand by and let them suffer, or are we going to fight back?" Hana looked at him, startled by the intensity in his words. For the first time, she saw the fire burning beneath his calm exterior, the quiet resolve of a man who had endured decades of oppression but refused to give up hope. "We'll fight," she said firmly, surprising even herself. "Together." Jae-hyun smiled faintly, not though his eyes remained serious. "Good. Because I have a feeling things are about to get complicated." And indeed, they were. Unbeknownst to them, the Empire's patience was wearing thin. Rumors of rebellion simmered among the lower ranks of workers, fueled by whispers of Jae-hyun's defiance. Meanwhile, the overseers grew increasingly suspicious of his motives, ordering tighter surveillance and stricter protocols around the Dragon Cub project. As the days passed, Jae-hyun and Hana found themselves walking a dangerous line. Every decision they made carried risks, every conversation a potential betrayal. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one thing remained clear. They were no longer just solving a problem. They were fighting for something greater than themselves. Even as the shadows closed in around them, Jae-hyun held on to the memory of the dragon cubs' peaceful faces, bathed in the glow of his improvised melody. Somewhere deep inside, he believed that music, and the humanity behind it, could still make a difference. The experiments continued, but the stakes grew higher with each passing day. Jae-hyun and Hana worked tirelessly, testing melodies, observing reactions, and refining their understanding of the dragon cubs' emotional needs. Yet beneath the surface of their progress, trouble was brewing. The Empire's overseers were losing patience. Their demands for results became more aggressive, their scrutiny sharper. Every interaction felt like walking on thin ice, one misstep away from disaster. Jae-hyun knew they couldn't keep stalling forever. The automated AI system he had sabotaged was nearing completion, and once it was deployed, and there would be no hiding the truth, that machines couldn't replace human connection. He also knew that when the overseers realized this, they wouldn't hesitate to punish him, or worse. One evening, after another long day of testing, Jae-hyun sat alone in the lab, staring at the glowing screen of his handheld synthesizer. His fingers hovered over the keys, but he didn't play. Instead, he thought about the dragon cubs, their shimmering scales and glowing eyes. They weren't just tools or power sources, they were living beings capable of feeling pain, fear, and joy. And somehow, through music, he had found a way to reach them. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Hana, carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. She set one down in front of him and took a seat nearby. For a moment, neither of them spoke. And the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, a rare reprieve from the constant pressure they faced. "We're running out of time," Hana said finally, breaking the quiet. "They're going to deploy the AI soon. What happens then?" Jae-hyun sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know," he admitted, but I can't let them use those cubs the way they want to. Not anymore. Hana nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. What if we took them away? Jae-hyun froze, turning to look at her. Took them where? He asked, his voice low. Somewhere safe, Hana replied. Out into space. There are places even the Empire can't touch, uncharted systems, hidden worlds. If we could get the cubs onto a ship, we might be able to give them a chance at freedom. The idea was dangerous, reckless, but it ignited something within Jae-hyun. Freedom. The word echoed in his mind, stirring memories of Earth, of nights spent under the stars before his abduction. He had spent decades trapped in servitude, forced to serve a regime he despised. Now here was an opportunity not just to save the dragon cubs, but to reclaim a piece of himself. It's risky, he said after a long pause. If we get caught, they'll kill us. I know, Hana said quietly. But isn't it worth it? To do something right? For once? Jae-hyun didn't answer immediately. He stared at the synthesizer in his hands, thinking about the melody he had improvised days earlier, the one that had brought such peace to the cubs. It wasn't just music, it was a reminder of what made life meaningful: connection, empathy, hope. All right, he said finally, his voice firm. We'll do it. But we need a plan. Over the next few days, Jae-hyun and Hana began laying the groundwork for their escape. Using Jae-hyun's knowledge of the facility's engineering systems, they identified potential routes out of the complex. They mapped out corridors, ventilation shafts, and maintenance tunnels, looking for paths that avoided security checkpoints. Hana used her access as a xenobiologist to gather supplies, medical kits, nutrient packs, and portable oxygen tanks. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun focused on preparing the transport ship. Hidden in a remote corner of the facility's launch bay was an old cargo vessel, long forgotten by the Empire. Its engines were outdated, its hull scarred with dents and scratches, but it was functional, and most importantly, unmonitored. Jae-hyun spent hours repairing its systems and ensuring it would be ready for flight when the time came. Their biggest challenge, however, was timing. The overseers were growing increasingly suspicious of Jae-hyun's reluctance to finalize the AI system. They demanded daily updates, their questions probing and accusatory. Jae-hyun played along, pretending to make adjustments while secretly delaying the process as much as possible. Then, one night, everything changed. The alarm blared suddenly, jarring Jae-hyun awake. He bolted upright in his bunk, heart pounding. Red lights flashed across the walls, casting eerie shadows in the dimly lit room. Someone pounded on his door. Jae-hyun, Hana's voice called urgently. They found out. We have to move, now. He didn't need to ask how. Grabbing his toolkit and the handheld synthesizer, Jae-hyun rushed outside to find Hana waiting for him, on her face pale but determined. Together they sprinted toward the containment chamber, dodging patrols and slipping through side corridors. When they reached the chamber, the dragon cubs were already agitated, sensing the chaos around them. Their cries filled the air, shrill and panicked. Jae-hyun quickly keyed in the override code, releasing the locks on their enclosure. As the doors slid open, the cubs surged forward, their glowing forms moving like liquid fire. "Stay close to me," Jae-hyun instructed, raising the synthesizer to his lips. He began to hum softly, the same lullaby that had calmed them before. The melody spread through the chamber, soothing the cubs almost instantly. They gathered around him, their movements gentle now, their eyes wide with trust. Hana led the way out of the chamber, guiding the group toward the launch bay. The journey was fraught with danger. Alarms wailed, guards shouted orders, and laser blasts whizzed past them. But Jae-hyun kept humming, his voice steady despite the chaos. The cubs followed obediently, their presence creating a protective barrier against anyone who tried to approach. Finally, they reached the cargo vessel. Hana climbed aboard first, activating the controls while Jae-hyun ushered the cubs inside. Once everyone was secure, she powered up the engines, the ship groaning as it came to life. Outside, armed guards converged on the bay, firing wildly as the vessel began to ascend. "Hold on!" Hana shouted, gripping the controls tightly. With a deafening roar, the ship broke free of the facility's gravity well, soaring into the vast expanse of space. For a moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, and the dragon cubs began to chirp softly, their voices harmonizing in a sound that was both alien and beautiful. Jae-hyun smiled faintly, lowering the synthesizer. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. As the ship drifted further from the Empire's reach, Hana turned to Jae-hyun, her eyes shining with determination. "Where to now?" she asked. Jae-hyun glanced at the cubs, their glowing forms casting a warm light across the cabin. "Anywhere they can be free," he replied. "Anywhere we all can." And with that, the cargo vessel disappeared into the stars, leaving behind the tyranny of the Zarnith Empire, and carrying with it the promise of a new beginning. The cargo vessel hurtled through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as it carried Jae-hyun, Hana, and the dragon cubs far from the Empire's grasp. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. For the first time in what felt like forever, they were free. Or at least, as free as they could be while still surrounded by the Empire's reach. Jae-hyun sat in the cramped cockpit beside Hana, his eyes fixed on the navigation screen. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and distant, yet somehow comforting. He had spent decades dreaming of escape, but now that it was happening, he found himself overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. The dragon cubs depended on him, and so did Hana. Failure wasn't an option. Behind them, in the main hold of the ship, the cubs moved restlessly. Their glowing forms pulsed faintly, casting shifting patterns of light across the walls. They seemed calmer now, their earlier panic replaced by curiosity. Occasionally, one would let out a soft chirp, testing the unfamiliar environment. Jae-hyun turned to glance at them, his expression softening. "They're adjusting," Hana said, noticing his gaze. "It'll take time, but they're strong. They'll make it." Jae-hyun nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. Adjusting to freedom was one thing. Surviving in a galaxy ruled by tyrants was another. The Empire wouldn't let them go without a fight. Even now, patrols could be scouring nearby sectors, searching for the stolen ship and its precious cargo. "We need to stay ahead of them," Jae-hyun said, turning back to the controls. "Find somewhere safe to hide until we figure out our next move." Hana agreed. Using her knowledge of uncharted systems, she plotted a course toward a remote cluster of asteroids, a place where ships rarely ventured. Thus, it wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy them time to regroup and plan. As the hours passed, the tension aboard the ship began to ease. Hana monitored the engines, ensuring they remained stable despite their age and wear. Jae-hyun tinkered with the synthesizer, experimenting with new melodies to keep the cubs calm. Together, they worked seamlessly, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. But the peace was short-lived. Midway through their journey, the ship's sensors picked up an incoming signal. At first, it was faint, little more than static, but it grew louder and clearer as they approached the asteroid field. Hana frowned, leaning closer to the console. "It's a distress call," she said, her voice tight with concern. "From a nearby vessel." Jae-hyun hesitated. Helping others was dangerous. They couldn't afford to draw attention to themselves. But ignoring the signal felt wrong, especially when they had just escaped oppression themselves. "We can't leave them," he decided finally. "Not if we want to live with ourselves." Hana nodded, adjusting the ship's trajectory. As they drew closer, the source of the signal became clear. A small transport shuttle, battered and leaking fuel. Its hull was scorched, evidence of recent conflict. Through the viewport, They could see figures moving inside, humans and aliens alike, all looking desperate and exhausted. "Looks like survivors," Hana murmured. "Probably refugees." Jae-hyun didn't respond immediately. His mind raced, weighing the risks. Taking on more passengers meant using up valuable resources, food, oxygen, fuel, all of which were already limited. But these people were victims of the same system that had enslaved him for decades. How could he turn them away? "We'll bring them aboard," he said at last. "But we need to be careful. If any of them are spies or informants, we're finished." Working quickly, Jae-hyun and Hana maneuvered the cargo vessel alongside the shuttle. Using the ship's docking clamps, they secured the smaller craft and opened the airlock. Moments later, a group of ragged survivors stumbled aboard, their faces gaunt but relieved. Among them was a young woman named Yoon-ji, who introduced herself as the leader of the group. She explained that they had been fleeing Imperial forces after a failed uprising on their home planet. Their ship had been attacked, leaving them stranded in space with no way to call for help. "You saved us," Yoon-ji said, her voice trembling with gratitude. "We owe you everything." Jae-hyun shook his head. "Don't thank us yet. We're not out of danger, not by a long shot." Over the next few hours, the survivors settled into the ship, sharing stories of their struggles and losses. Many had seen loved ones killed or taken by the Empire. Others spoke of entire communities wiped out in retaliation for acts of rebellion. Despite their hardships, there was a spark of defiance in their eyes, a refusal to give up, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Listening to them, Jae-hyun felt a renewed sense of purpose. These people weren't just victims, they were fighters, and together, they might stand a chance against the Empire. "We can't keep running," Yoon-ji said during a quiet moment in the main hold. "If we band together, if we fight back, we might actually have a shot at taking them down." Her words resonated with everyone on board, including Hana. For too long, they had accepted the Empire's tyranny as inevitable. But now, surrounded by others who shared their pain and determination, the idea of resistance no longer seemed impossible. "We'll need weapons," Hana pointed out, "and allies, a lot of them." "And a plan," Jae-hyun added. "Something smart, something they won't see coming." The discussion continued late into the night, ideas flowing freely as the group brainstormed strategies. By morning, they had a rough outline. Locate other rebel cells scattered throughout the galaxy, unite them under a common cause, and strike at key points within the Empire's infrastructure. It was ambitious and risky, but it offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. With their course set, the cargo vessel resumed its journey toward the asteroid field. Along the way, Jae-hyun continued to care for the dragon cubs, playing soothing melodies on the synthesizer whenever they grew restless. The cubs responded eagerly, their chirps and movements becoming more playful as they adapted to their new surroundings. One evening, as the ship drifted silently among the asteroids, Jae-hyun stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Behind him, the faint hum of the synthesizer echoed through the ship, mingling with the soft sounds of the cubs' contentment. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to dream, not just of survival, but of victory. Somewhere out there, and beyond the Empire's reach, lay the possibility of a better future. A future where beings like the dragon cubs, and people like him, could live without fear. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened, he wouldn't face it alone. The asteroid field was a maze of jagged rocks and swirling dust, a place where even the Empire's most advanced sensors struggled to penetrate. For Jae-hyun, Hana, and their growing group of survivors, it offered a temporary haven, a place to rest, regroup, and prepare for what lay ahead. But hiding wasn't enough. They needed to act, and soon. Inside the cargo vessel, the atmosphere had shifted. What had started as a desperate escape was now becoming something more: a rebellion. The survivors, once broken and fearful, began to see themselves as part of something bigger. Under Yunji's leadership, they organized themselves into teams, each with a specific role to play. Some focused on repairing the ship, others on gathering intelligence about the Empire's movements. Jae-hyun and Hana remained at the center of it all, guiding the group with quiet determination. The dragon cubs, too, played a crucial role. Their glowing forms became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest creatures could defy oppression. Jae-hyun spent hours with them, teaching them simple commands and reinforcing their bond through music. The cubs responded eagerly, their chirps and playful movements bringing moments of lightness to an otherwise tense situation. "We're ready," Yunji announced one evening, standing in the main hold where everyone had gathered. Her voice was steady, her eyes blazing with resolve. "It's time to strike back." Jae-hyun nodded, stepping forward to address the group. "We've got one shot at this," he said, his tone calm but firm. "If we fail, the Empire will crush us, and anyone else who dares to resist. But if we succeed, we'll send a message that says, we won't be silenced anymore." The plan was simple yet daring. Using the cargo vessel as a decoy, they would infiltrate a nearby Imperial outpost, a supply depot critical to the Empire's operations in the sector. The goal was twofold: sabotage the facility and steal weapons and resources to arm their growing rebellion. It was risky, but it was also their best chance to weaken the Empire's grip on the region. As the group prepared for the mission, Jae-hyun worked tirelessly, modifying the ship's systems to ensure it could withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. He installed additional shielding to protect against enemy fire and rerouted power to the engines, giving them a slight edge in speed. Hana assisted him, her hands moving deftly as she calibrated the ship's sensors and communication arrays. The night before the attack, Jae-hyun found himself alone in the observation deck once again. The stars outside were bright, their light piercing through the darkness of space. He thought about Earth, about the life he had lost and the choices that had brought him here. He thought about the dragon cubs, their innocence and resilience. And he thought about Hana, whose courage and brilliance had become a guiding force in his life. "You should get some rest," a voice said softly behind him. He turned to see Hana standing in the doorway, her expression gentle but concerned. "I'm fine," he replied, though his tired eyes betrayed him. "Just thinking." Hana stepped closer, joining him at the viewport. "About what?" "Everything," Jae-hyun admitted. "What happens if we win? What happens if we lose? What kind of galaxy do we want to build when this is over?" Hana smiled faintly, her gaze drifting to the stars. "A better one," she said simply. "One where no one has to suffer like we did. Where beings like the cubs can live free." Jae-hyun nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever happened tomorrow, they were fighting for something worth believing in. The next morning, the cargo vessel slipped out of the asteroid field and set course for the Imperial outpost. As they approached, the ship's sensors detected increased activity: patrols circling the facility, cargo ships unloading supplies, and heavy defenses guarding every entrance. It was exactly what they had expected. Using a combination of stealth and deception, Jae-hyun guided the ship toward a blind spot in the outpost's sensor grid. Once in position, the team launched their attack. Yunji led a small strike force onto the surface, disabling key systems and creating chaos within the facility. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun and Hana remained aboard the ship, coordinating the operation and ensuring the cubs stayed safe. The battle was fierce but swift. Imperial forces, caught off guard by the sudden assault, struggled to mount an effective defense. Explosions rocked the outpost as critical supply lines were destroyed, crippling its ability to support the Empire's fleet. Now, by the time reinforcements arrived, the rebels had already secured their objectives and retreated to the safety of the cargo vessel. As the ship soared away from the burning wreckage, cheers erupted among the crew. For the first time in years, they had struck a blow against the Empire, a blow that would not soon be forgotten. But Jae-hyun knew this was only the beginning. The Empire wouldn't let such an act go unpunished. Retaliation would come, swift and brutal. Yet despite the looming threat, there was a sense of triumph in the air, a belief that they had taken the first step toward a brighter future. In the days that followed, the rebellion grew. News of their victory spread quickly, inspiring others to join their cause. Hidden bases sprang up across the galaxy, connected by networks of spies, smugglers, and sympathizers. Together, and they formed a coalition unlike any the Empire had ever faced. A coalition united by a shared desire for freedom. Through it all, Jae-hyun remained at the heart of the movement, his music serving as both a weapon and a beacon. The dragon cubs traveled with him wherever he went, their glowing forms a testament to the power of empathy and connection. And Hana stood by his side, her unwavering support fueling his determination. One evening, as the cargo vessel drifted silently through space, Jae-hyun hummed a familiar tune, the same lullaby that had calmed the cubs so many months ago. Around him, the cubs gathered close, their soft chirps blending with the melody. Hana watched from nearby, her smile warm and proud. "We've come a long way," she said quietly. Jae-hyun nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "And we've got a long way to go. But we'll get there, one song at a time." With the galaxy stretched out before them, Jae-hyun, Hana, and their companions pressed onward, carrying with them the hope of a new dawn. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, freedom awaited, and they were determined to find it.